Director Coverdale.
Yes, I'm here.
Director Feldman.
Here.
Director Larimer.
Here.
Vice President Reynolds.
Yep, here.
President Michelson.
Here.
All right.
Thank you very much. And I am in the office, so we do have a flag to salute. All rise, please. I pledge allegiance
to the
The
flag
flag of the United States of America,
to the republic,
to the republic
for which
it
stands
stands one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and
and
justice.
justice for all.
Oh, geez.
Amen.
Sorry.
Amen.
Okay. These are all friendlies, right? We don't have any public comment. Or Lauren? Who's Lauren?
She's with Raftellus.
Oh, okay.
She's the brains behind the model.
Yes.
Okay. No, it's,
These are Raftellus.
thank you for clarifying that. Okay. So we're all in very, very, very good company. Ken, how did you find the claims to be?
I reviewed the financial statement, the payables, and also the petty cash and the credit card. I found everything to be in order. There are a couple I wanted to nitpick, and I just couldn't get motivated.
Good,
So I'd
okay.
move we approve them as presented.
Okay. Does any other directors have any comments on the consent calendar? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to accept.
And one comment, just regarding the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Directors for June 9th. I wanted to commend Denise on doing what I think is a great job for the first set of minutes that she delivered to us. Really, I read them and I said, hey, this is pretty good, this is pretty good for a starter set. So I just wanted to say, go for it, keep it up.
Thank you.
No,
Comment on the minute, right?
thanks for acknowledging that, Bob. Thank you.
I would
Appreciate
add to that the production report is pretty interesting this year because what it shows is that we have a 20% increase in water taken locally, which of course that means we didn't have to buy it from SFPUC. That's really a terrific result. It's 50 million gallons. It's a lot of water.
Yeah, no, Denison is certainly paying off. Thank you. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
That we accept the minutes.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. Then Denise, please.
Director Coverdale.
Aye.
Director Feldman.
Yes.
Director Larimer.
Yes.
Vice President Reynolds.
Yes.
President Michelson.
Yes, thank you. So moving on to number 5, meetings attended, director comments. Any?
I attended a meeting of the Finance Committee, but we'll be reporting on that later on.
Yeah, and I guess that would also apply to Director Reynolds and myself in facilities. Anyone else? Thank you very much. Moving on to general business, and Sanjay may be coming up, huh? Mary, want to take off with that?
Let me take off first.
Okay.
So, first of all, I do want to welcome back Sanjay Gar, Vice President at Raftellus, financial consultant, and also Lauren DeMine, who is a consultant, and as Sanjay said, was the model cruncher and will be the driver tonight as well. I want to provide a little bit of background. First of all, in 2018, Raftellus prepared a cost of service analysis and rate study in order to develop the cost of service-based water rates that would meet the requirements of Prop 218 and the 2015 appellate court decision for the San Juan Capistrano case. So, at this time, we did a restructuring of our rates We moved from 4 tiers to 3 tiers and did some, other structural changes. At the December 2019 board meeting, the board approved engaging Raftellus to prepare an updated rate study report based on the 2018 cost of service analysis that would be used for the district's rates for the fiscal years 2020, 2021, and 2021-22. So at the March 10th board meeting, Sanjay joined us and conducted the first financial planning and rate update workshop. At this meeting, staff was instructed to prepare the Prop 218 notice for the April board meeting that would be effective July 1st. But as a special meeting on April 3rd, the board moved to table the discussion of the proposed rate increase for 3 months until July 2020, given the COVID-19 pandemic and the uncertainty in the economic climate. So we are here today again to walk through the financial model with Sanjay. We will, and he and Lauren have updated the model with our, budget revisions and our updated CIP. And so, one of the things with this, the model, I asked Sanjay to focus on 2 scenarios, given my discussions with the finance committee. The first scenario is similar to what we walked away with in March, which was having a rate increase with no loans, no financing. The second scenario reflects modest financing in year 2, which would result in smaller rate increases than we originally projected. So back in March. So, and then both scenarios have rate increases that would commence on January 1st, 2021, and again on January 1st, 2022. So, I'll say that, Sanjay is going to walk through these options. I will say out of the gate, my recommendation is the second scenario with some financing and more modest increases given our current COVID situation and the economic uncertainty. But, we are also sorting through our costs of our CIP and some of our, trying to understand our, what our water sales will be given the, the COVID situation. So, that would be my take, but I am going to turn this over to Sanjay and he's going to give you a presentation and work with the model. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. So should I share my screen, Mary? And
yes.
Okay. And then what we'll do is, just from a logistics perspective, is I'll share the presentation, and then once we go through the presentation, most likely we'll like to go into the model, and then I'll have Lauren, I'll stop sharing my presentation, and then I'll have Lauren share her slide, and she'll open the model and she'll run the model, and then we'll go through different iterations. So hopefully this will work technologically, and we'll see how it all plays out. So here's my first one. First thing is sharing screen number 3, the screen. So I'm assuming you can see the slide says Coastside County Water District financial plan. Let me make sure I can see you all.
Yep.
All right, so I hear a yes, so that's good.
Yes.
So let's get started. And then through the presentation, if there's any questions or comments, definitely please ask me. We can answer them then. And then as mentioned, Mary said, we do have the model. I also just like to, it's sort of strange these days. I think we all agree with that. And the last travel trip I actually did, last time I was on a plane, was seeing you guys. So that's the last time I was on a plane and staying at a hotel and traveling was when we met. So a lot has changed since March. So today we're going to go over the update of the financial plan, the major input changes, and then present these 2 scenarios, as Mary mentioned. And then we can go over the schedule. And of course, we can go into the model. So the updates of the inputs. So the main, thing, we've had a lot of dialogue internally discussing about sales. What do we think will happen? We have COVID-19 restriction on commercial water use that occurred in fiscal year 2020. And also, we do expect some in 21. So we're expecting a 4% decrease in non-residential sales. And because of that, what we're anticipating is that we'll have 580 million gallons. Now, we do expect sales to increase in the COVID, where our crystal ball says that a vaccine will be available and we'll be not dealing with COVID, hopefully in 2022. And then life will be back to normal. And then we're assuming sales will be 603. CIP, we've gotten the new estimates associated with the CIP. When CIP is given to us, it's given to us in today's dollars. We want to inflate it to future dollars. So we're assuming a 3.2% increase in capital costs associated with construction and labor. That's sort of a standard percentage. Then we have this. Now what we're saying is that we're only going to spend 95% of the CIP in each given year. And we look at that information. So the overall, the total CIP is 5.3, but when we do 95%, it's only $5 million. So next we go into the financial plans, and we have three scenarios. The first scenario is, what if we do nothing, no revenue adjustments? And what we're showing you here is the ending balance. This is your target right over here. These are ending balance. These assumptions assume that you spend all your expenditures that year, all your budget, all your capital projects. As you can see, we have a serious problem where we're nosediving and then a negative fund balance. So some kind of adjustment is needed. The two scenarios that we're looking at is first one where it's basically a cash funded of 6.5% for the first two fiscal years effective in January. Then we'll go back to the normal cycle of July. That would be a 7.5%. The second one is a 5% increase. Again, same cycle where they both will recur in January, then in July for the following year. And this would be a $3 million debt issuance. One of the things that Mary and I have talked about and with Lauren is, the size of the debt, most likely that might be a bit larger, but that will be determined about what's the appropriate amount. There is an appropriate amount to issue when the debt's a little bit too small, it might be not worth it. But Mary did mention to me that she does have some banks that are interested in borrowing money. So scenario one is the cash funded, as I mentioned, the 6.5 in January for the first 2 years and 7.5 the following Julys. As you can see, we're below the target, but we work our way out of it by 2025. Now the board is only considering 2 years of rate adjustment, so we're only looking really at the first 2 years, but it's good to see out in the future what's happening. And this also assumes that we spend all that CIP money. So if for whatever reason we don't spend that CIP money, then our ending balances will just be healthier. Eventually we will catch up to that expenditure level. The second one is the debt issuance. So it's a minor adjustments of 5% for the first 2 years. And then following the other 3 years, except they would start in July, there'll be a $3 million issuance in the next fiscal year, 2020. As I mentioned, that exact amount will be determined as we get a little bit closer to that. As you can see, we're above the target in 2020 and then slightly below. Again, there's an assumption here, a strong assumption that we'll be spending all that CIP expenditure with that. So I'm going to pause here before I go into schedule. There is a schedule we have. Well, maybe just talk about the schedule briefly, and then we can go into the model, look at different scenarios. Today we're here, July 14th. We're hoping to get direction so that we could start with the report, the administrative record that's needed, and then do the Prop 218 notice sometime in August so that we can have the public hearing sometime in October, and the rates can be effective January 1st. So I am going, unless would the board would like to open up the model and look at different scenarios, or what would the board like?
Board members?
Let's open it up.
All right. Let's open up. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to let Lauren share her screen.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me just share my screen. And let me know if you can see it, okay?
Yeah, we can see it.
And maybe you can minimize the ribbon.
That's what I was just going to
Okay,
do.
sorry.
You mean the ribbon at the top up here?
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Let me move this out of the way. Oops.
Scott?
Flipper.
Sorry. I don't know what I did. My apologies. There it goes. It doesn't like it when you move the Zoom bar, I guess. So I'll have to live with it down here. So this is our financial plan model, which you're probably familiar with, having seen it at the last meeting. We just made the updates that Sanjay discussed. And right now I have input into the model, the scenario one that Sanjay covered with the 6.5% revenue adjustments in 21 and 22 effective in January, and 7.5% revenue adjustments in 23 through 25 effective in July with no debt issuance. And this is with 95% of the CIP funded every year, as Sanjay mentioned.
So maybe we can take each board member's comments one at a time, if that makes sense, President?
Sure. Who wants to start?
Well,
Why don't you
I could
go
ask
ahead.
a question.
Sure.
You know, our CIP budget for the next 5 years is right around $5 million on average. I think it's 5.3 or something like that. And on a 50-year replacement basis as a benchmark, that says we're evaluating our infrastructure at full cost if we had to replace it immediately at just over $200 million. And I think that's several $100 million short of where we ought to be. Our physical plant really costs a lot more than that if we had to replace it. And it will continue to cost more each subsequent years with inflation. So I think we're really not funding the capital improvement program at a rate that we can replace the entire system every 50 years. We need to fix that. And it's been a gradual struggle to get the projects lined up to fix that and to get the cash flow available to fix that. I would like to see a 6.5% rate increase that would start in January, plus the idea that we're going to borrow money in the out years, maybe 2023, and that we're going to also increase the capital improvement spending gradually each year as we can bring more projects in line to produce them. So what would the model say if we did that? Say, for example, stayed with 6.5% and kept the $3 or $4 million borrowing in 2023. What does your model say in that case?
So keeping these revenue adjustments, but putting a debt issuance in this year instead?
In 2023. In other words,
Okay.
The same debt issuance or a little bit more in 2023, which I think was your plan B.
Okay.
It was 2022.
But using the, or 2022.
Was it 2022?
Okay, 2022. And then keeping the 6.5%, plus the idea that we're going to increase the capital improvement budget every year by, say, $500,000 or something like that until we're up to around $6 or $6.5 million a year, which would essentially say that we're evaluating our infrastructure at replacement costs of over $300 million.
So maybe on the CIP input, well, 'cause I think the director wants to have a gradual increase of $500,000. So maybe on the CIP input, just put $500,000, maybe starting in 2023, and then $1 million, and then $1.5 million.
Okay.
We didn't anticipate this one, so.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of the best way to go about doing that. One moment.
So-
Sorry here.
Yeah, so maybe go into CIP input.
Yeah. Sorry. I have several screens open in my laptop camera. It's not in the right location. So under the CIP, into the, sorry, I'm going to stop sharing my camera for 1 minute just so that I can close my laptop screen here.
You guys need to hire a human factors engineer to help you create a usable interface.
Either that or we stop asking such complicated questions.
We didn't, yeah, this was not enough. When we,
Yeah.
went, we went over the script with Mary, we decided.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far into the weeds here. And this is where we're already, you know, up to our eyeballs in the weeds.
Well, it's not really a complicated
Well,
question.
can't we just go to the bottom line there and add a half?
Yeah, why don't, Lauren, just do it on news, bulk,
On that
tastic,
spreadsheet.
row 76, just add 500,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim, was your point that we have to replace 200 mil over the next 50 years?
300 mil.
300 is? I thought it was 2.
No,
We got
no,
100 miles of
Two is the
pipe.
two is the current track.
But
200. I mean, 50 years times 5 is 250. So even at 5 mil a year, which is our present rate of run, we would be quite close to having that done. Number two, it's been my impression over the last 15 years that we're hard pressed, and we always have been, to spend the 4 to 5 that we've committed to over the time. And I still feel that trying to go to 6, 6.5, 7 might be a little bit of a reach just
Yeah,
to pull it off. I mean,
Hence my in the weeds comment.
no,
huh?
I disagree, because if we can't keep up with replacing the infrastructure as it ages out, then we've got a problem. And I think that that's a valid point, that, you know, here's our treatment plant that we have to rebuild the thing. We've got the same with our distribution. Our tanks are in the same situation. I do think we have to pay attention to what the life of the equipment is and make sure we're rebuilding it before it catastrophically fails.
So did I understand correctly that you want to see 500,000 in this year, and then $1 million in this year,
Yeah, and then 1.5 the
and
following.
then 1.5 in this year?
Yeah.
Correct. And then 2 the next, and you could go on down the line if you want.
At some point, we're going to max out.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's good.
This is the last year of the study period, so
Yeah, so I think that's good enough. So let's go
Okay.
to the dashboard.
Oh,
oh, and let me change this.
and can we go to 100% just for funsies?
We're at 100% here with
Now we're
this
at
set as scenario.
95%.
So this is set at scenario 1, which is the full base CIP. If
Oh,
I were
good.
to change
Cool.
this to scenario 3, then it would do a whatever percentage you
Oh,
entered.
great. Great.
So this is the result of that with the
The
showing
reserves
the
aren't
ending
looking
balances.
so good.
No, so you would have to do either a higher rate increase or a larger debt. Most likely, I would,
Like
you know,
5 million.
yeah,
5 million.
Yeah.
yeah, 5 million or 6 million, something like that. Yeah, so
Right.
there you go.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that if we look at the realistically at whether or not we're going to be able to keep the system at state of the art, we have to spend more, and it's a big problem. It may mean refocusing and getting more engineering help to design the projects, but the projects are there whether we do them or not, and if we don't do them, we just fall behind.
Sanjay, last time we had a session with you, I think it was 2 years ago, we asked you specifically a question, which was, how do you feel about borrowing? And at that time, and I don't mean to paraphrase your comments, and I didn't pull the minutes to see what they were exactly, but I remember you saying that you weren't sure we should do a lot of borrowing. And so I'd like to hear your take on our district, specifically with our goals and our financial condition, what you think for us specifically.
So under normal conditions, I still stand with that comment that, given the R&R nature of the CIP, given the amount of debt you already have, under normal conditions, I wouldn't suggest issuing more debt. But these are policies, first thing. Now, but given the current condition that we are in with COVID-19, given the perception that the public's going to have with regard to increases in rates, I think we need to be sensitive to that. And so that's why, even though in percentage terms it's not much, 6.5%, 5%, there is a perception and a story or a narrative there. So it does, in this situation, it may make sense to issue debt. But these are policies the board needs to consider. The other thing to think about is interest rates. As you know, people are very concerned about where to put their money. And I suspect you can get a very good term on that interest rate right now. So there's an opportunity that exists, and it's sort of a nice opportunity given the situation that we're in.
Yeah, the interest rates are very attractive.
Well, when Ken and I met at the financial meeting with Mary, we had the opportunity to review the capital plan as well. And given the data that we saw there, which we thought made sense to us, and I know that Glenn and Chris put a lot of effort into trying to come up with a reasonable assessment. When we looked at the numbers and we looked at the options, I don't know how Ken feels, but I felt that option 2, as presented here, which was about a 3 mil hit with the interest rates with the increases we proposed, would meet muster, and that we would still be in good shape given the data that we have been presented with the known 5-year future projection and 10-year projections. We know that you can't project that far in advance and really know much beyond the short-term years. And we felt that took care of that territory. Now, whether we have to start putting in more assets, grow more reserves over the next 15 years to cover the future years, that's really the philosophical question. My view has been that we still have a public to serve. We still have to be conscious of their situation, and we still have to do what we feel makes sense so that they feel that we're working with them and for them. And we have to keep those rates in mind at some point. And I think that the rates we presented, both the 6.5%, 7.5% scenario or the 5% scenario, would alone were our best efforts to do that and meet the objectives of both the financial plan as we saw it and the capital plan as we understood it. Now, maybe we didn't understand it, but that's what we thought. And so my view is we could tweak these numbers until the cows come home, but I'm not sure that we would have any better information at this point than we have now based on the numbers, and that we have made the decisions based on the finances we need to keep the reserves going and to continue to do the work for the community and to be a good provider of water. So I guess I'm with Chris a bit. We can take this and parse it, but I'm not sure. I have enough information now to do more than I've done. I may not be, that bright, but my best efforts were put into this with Ken's to make this reasonable and make sense. And it did to us. Now, if it doesn't to others, we understand that. But I'm still not convinced that we haven't done it keeping in mind all the needs and all of the information we had. I don't, Ken, what do you think?
My comment would be that I think it's very important, given the economic condition of our constituents, the economic condition of the United States, the state of California, the additional reclosing. I think that for us to be a little bit humble in our price increase right now is commensurate with the condition of people in the United States, and I think in the state of California, and I think in our local community. I don't think we suffer by giving a 5% increase request for a year or two. I don't think we suffer by borrowing, $5 million. We're only talking about borrowing $3 million. I think the interest rates are going to be some of the lowest that we see for a long time. And so I'm not afraid of that because I think we have the assets. I think we have the wherewithal. And I think that we've been selling water and our customers have been buying water and paying their bills pretty effectively. I think we ought to, give them a pat on the back for that and take one more worry off the plate. I don't want to kick the can down the road. So I think Jim makes some really important points. And I think that maybe we need a special committee, subcommittee, or whatever of the financial or the capital improvement committee to look at if we were to replace, what percentage of our major assets, and if we needed to replace them in 50 years, what would that effect be on the budget? And I think maybe in 2023, when we do this again, we should bring that to bear and be even better stewards in the long run. But, I think either of these two options will meet our needs. The beauty is we can always adjust these rates if we have to. It may mean we have to go through another 2018 and say, gee, I guess we messed up and it won't be a 2-year deal. But we also have that option. I don't want it, but I feel confident the 5.555. We told people, 5 or 7 years ago, we were going to try to hold consistently at 5%. I think it'd be nice for us to live up to that. And I think borrowing is more than reasonable in this particular time. And I've always been a pay-as-you-go cash guy. But I'm leaning a little more toward why should we pay for all of it right now when it's going to last 50 years? So that's why I fell on the side of the other proposal that's a little more humble in the price increase.
Can I make another comment? By implementing the rate increase in January instead of now, what we've effectively done is in terms of the fiscal year collection, we've reduced it by half. We could make it, we could have it start in March and then we can further reduce it. But the rate of growth of the rate would be the same. And we could do that next year too. I mean, the next year and a half, 2 years are going to be very uncertain because of COVID. I think this is not the time to have a 2-year plan. You ought to be looking at this again this time next year, because who knows what's going to happen this fall. The Spanish flu got much worse in the fall that's ahead of us. We don't know that this pandemic won't do exactly the same thing that the Spanish flu did in 1918. I mean, it was a super killer come the fall after a light summer. And we're not even getting a light summer here. We're getting a horrible outcome this summer in many states as they're going back into the stage 1 of the pandemic. So, we've reduced the rate by half by only implementing it for half the fiscal year. We could reduce it more than that, and you could do that again next year as well. So that's just another way of dealing with this that I think we ought to be considering.
I wholeheartedly disagree. So the legacy of COVID here will be a legacy of debt through smoke and mirrors. We're going to artificially keep our rate increases down by increasing our debt. And Sanjay, I heard you loud and clear last time you were here. I'm a little disappointed you're backing off. You said we are at the upper limits of debt. Now I hear 3 to 5 million thrown around with Sanjay, with your blessing. I'm disappointed. You really want to saddle us with another 5 million for this smoke and mirrors charade that we're trying to pull off here? My God, I'm disappointed.
This is,
Well, we had originally planned to do something in September, if you remember. So we at the Finance Committee meeting and with Mary opted to try to see if we could do the January 2-year thing. And in order to make that work and give us the option to make the rate more amenable to the needs of the community over time, to do the 3 mil. We had 3, not 5. And we thought 3 was a containable number. We didn't see that as being out of sorts. I don't think Sanjay felt, that we had made an error there in terms of the size of the thing. And would you show the 5-year plus 5% model, the second one? We didn't see that. Can we take a look at that one, number 2, the second option? We haven't seen that. We should at least see what that looks like and see how that works for us. It's 3 mil, yeah.
And then Lauren, you have to change the CIP too.
And go to 95%, I think is what we said. And all the CIPs have to be back to the original 5-year ones that we had, correct? Yeah. We looked at that and none of us, I didn't have heartburn, neither did Ken. And we didn't see that the imposition of the 3 mil really caused terrible havoc on our reserves, paying off that debt, and also the 5% didn't. We also knew that if in fact things didn't go as we planned, we have the right to redo this in a year. We could actually redo the budget. It's not something we can't operate and change. Is that correct, Sanjay? We're allowed to, and Patrick?
Correct.
We can do another budget if we so choose and go through 218 again, I believe, if we have to. So we're not fixed. This is not fixed in concrete. If we didn't like what we did in 2 years, we change the philosophy and do some things differently. But for the next 2 years, given this scenario, it seemed as good as we've done in the past, actually, and didn't seem to break any rules or break any bones or anything. So that's what we felt, the Finance Committee, and listening to Mary's input as well, and asked Sanjay to, vet that for us and show us what he thought. So I don't know if you feel, Sanjay, that this really is something that's not in our best interest. If so, you should let us know. But we didn't feel that we had gone over the top here. That's fine.
So, let me just, so is it, this is perception. One view of this scenario is that we're taking advantage of interest rates. I don't know what you've heard from the banks that you've been dealing with, but I suspect the interest rates are at an all-time low. So you're taking advantage of that. You're trying to minimize the rate increase. You're showing to this, to your ratepayers that, we were thinking about 6.5, now we're doing 5. So you're showing empathy. At the same time, the president is correct. One could also argue that it's a smoke and mirrors. So, there's 2 views of the world here. As we know, there's lots of views of what we view the reality or the news. But this is policy. This is up to you. This is your decision. I'm here to guide you in this. If you're going to issue debt, this is the time to do it. Let's say it, and that's how I'm saying it. If you were going to do it, this is a good scenario to issue it. Like I said, in March, before COVID-19 hit to the level that it hit now, I wouldn't have suggested it.
I'd like to point out that if you were to buy this as this district as a business, you'd easily pay over $200 million for it if it could be bought and sold, which of course it can't. But if it were a private company, it could be. And our debt level relative to the value of the business is really pretty small. We're not talking 5% here. And there aren't many businesses worth $200 million that only have $5 million in or 5% in debt. We have less than that. So I don't think we're borrowing enough. I think we should be borrowing more. And the fact that rates are so low now, we're just, actually with inflation, we'll be printing money because we'll be paying it back with dollars that, we just can't buy such a good deal.
I'm more than happy to speak one more time. And my comment would be that as far as I'm concerned, this particular model is frugal. It anticipates the future. It takes into account what we really think we're going to do. It puts a little more money in our pockets so that we can make sure we get newness fixed to the quality level we want. It makes sure that we can look strategically and carefully at the tanks and take care of those issues maybe in a more real way. And I don't see any harm in this. I don't think it's smoke and mirrors. I think it's a very well managed machine that can utilize money at an interest rate that'll be unheard of at some point. And I think that is a really smart move, not a stupid move. And if we find in January of 2022 that it's not adequate and we need 6.5%, well, maybe we go back and do that. Or maybe it happens in July or of 2023 or 2024. I mean, it's like playing poker and you're already holding three of a kind. We're in fine shape either way. I've always worried about kicking the can down the road. We've hardly done that. However, we do have tanks that are at risk. We've got a water treatment situation that needs to be improved. And I think we've never been anything more than forthright at taking care of that. And I don't see how this would hurt us. And hey, guess what? If we don't want to borrow $3 million in 2022, don't sign the papers. Increase the rates. So you got every option in the world on the table, and you show the customers that you guys have struggled, you've been good, you've paid your bills, even though you have hardship, we're with you in this. We're all rowing together. And how could we do anything that's, more positive?
I think this option better posures us for the uncertainties that we face. That's probably, in my view, as important as anything. We have a lot of unknowns in terms of some of the equipment. We know that. Having that loan in the bank at some point may give us that extra bit of edge, and we can raise rates if we, in fact, must. It also speaks to your thing, Ken, in a way, in terms of the uncertainty of this virus. I agree with you. I mean, we don't know what it means going forward and how bad things may or might not be. This gives us some leverage, some insurance, and we still have the potential of rate increases if we must. We also take into account that very much uncertainty in our futures for all the people involved here who may, in fact, be even worse shape than they are now. And we give them a little better time in terms of how we deal with our rates, because we have no choice, I think, going forward, but to increase rates. I don't think we can, defer this forever, because at some point it'll bite us. So we're trying to work a middle line where everybody feels we've made our best efforts to do what we could and to meet the objectives of the district's needs and the customers going forward. So that's where I have said my piece. Thanks.
This is Glenn. I think that that many of the points that people have brought up are really important, that we don't know where the economy is going to be in 6 months. And I think we want to be very cautious how much burden we plan on putting on on the customers. But at the same time, I really feel really strongly that this team, this current board, the water district, the staff, are working really hard to maintain an awful lot of equipment. And I think that, I'm not sure whether it was Jim or Ken or both, made the comment that it would probably be very reasonable to prepare for our next rate increase by looking at where our infrastructure is in terms of its life cycle. I think we can't do that this year, but that would be really smart to be looking at, because we do need, if it is going to last 50 years, we have to be prepared to replace it in 50 years. So I think that Jim's point or Ken's point is really quite valid, that we should be looking at making sure that we aren't caught holding a piece of equipment that's failed and we've got to scramble to replace it. And currently we're putting real money on the table for tanks and treatment plant.
Anyone else?
What's next? Well, we can charge the capital committee, the facilities committee, as part of their charter going forward over the next year or two, to look at the broader issue of the big picture over 50 years and come up with some assessment and proposal to do just that. I have no problem with that. I think that'd be a good thing. And then the finance committee can see what does that mean to the future budgeting, and how does that affect the future plans that we have to generate in terms of our rate assessments and our financial well-being. Makes sense to me. I think the points are well taken, and that in fact, it might be good to look at that in some more depth, and I think that would be fine for capital committee and, to have that as part of their charter. I trust them to do that if, in fact, that's an important thing to deal with. That's my opinion. But we can do that going forward. I think right now we have a budget that we have to decide on and an approach to going forward. That's it. So I think, we have to make a decision of some sort.
Are you looking for a motion?
I'd like to make one more comment before we do that. I agree with Bob that we have to do something in the immediate term. But in the long term, we should be looking at how much we're spending on capital improvement based against how soon we think we will spend enough that every 50 years we've renewed the entire system. And I think we're not spending enough there. I already said that, I'll just say that again. And also, if you look at where our cash comes from, it comes from water sales. But if you look at where our expenses are, they're fixed and they're independent of water sales. And we've got those two numbers exactly backwards, which means that every time our sales go down, we take a proportionately larger hit on our cash flow. There's a couple of ways we can adjust that. One is by increasing the base rate. And this is a long-term discussion, but something I hope that in the year ahead, or a couple of years ahead, we'll start to look at this seriously. Why do we have such a low base charge relative to the sales, the cash we get for sales? I mean, it's important to incentivize people to conserve, but we're almost at that international standard for best practice on water conservation. We're very close to 50 gallons per person per day, which is an amazing accomplishment all by itself, something we should be very proud of. And the real risk ahead isn't just things like COVID, which of course is an unexpected serious risk, but there's also a possibility of drought in the future, and we don't have a drought rate. And that's another thing that we should be investigating long-term. Why don't we have a drought rate? I mean, that would also encourage people to conserve more if all of a sudden during a drought, they were charged more for the water that they use. That would be an additional incentive for conservation. And that's certainly consistent with the AWWA's best practices for how rates and fees should be set. So we haven't done either of those things. I think we should investigate all of them in the year ahead. But I agree with Bob that tonight we have to make a plan. And I'm ready to vote on something.
So this is Pat. The way the agenda is structured is that there's no board action required at this time. So you don't need to make a motion or take a vote. But I do believe your staff and consultants need direction for how to prepare the rate study for the next board meeting, which is when the board would take action to set a public hearing, which is required under Proposition 218, and to send out the notices. And what we would do on our end we would prepare the notice so the board could review it with a proposed rate increase for however the board wants to direct us tonight.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. It clearly states in the board packet, no board action required tonight. However, we can do a straw poll for direction.
Can we direct Sanjay to move forward to embed this second option as the option of choice to prepare that for the appropriate vote at the August meeting? I don't remember what it was. And to use the soon to be approved capital plan, which is on the next item on the agenda, which he used in this analysis, I believe, and go forward on that basis. That would be my proposal. So that's what I wanted. Are there anybody object?
Me.
I think it's the most sensible thing to do.
Can we increase the amount that we borrow next year?
I don't think we need to do it until we see if we need it.
Right. It's a placeholder.
But does the 218 plan require that we specify how much we're going to borrow?
I don't think so. No.
If it doesn't, then it doesn't matter. But if it does, then it does matter. So I don't know what's the answer.
We just have to state what the increases are going to be.
Yeah, the only real direction I see is whether we go with the 5 or 6.5 tonight.
Right.
And the borrowing is down the road.
Right.
So I just want to clarify that when Sanjay prepares his rate study, does it or does it not factor in a borrowing within the rate study period? Because if it does, then I think we would need to factor that in. But I'll defer to Sanjay on that.
So the rate study, the administrative record that we'll have will show, if we go with this scenario, a $3 million issuance. But the way I like to characterize these documents is that this is a planning document. This is based on the information available as of today. And then the board will revisit that. Pat, you can correct me here if I misspoke, but I don't believe that it puts the board locks the board in a position of issuing debt or amount of debt. It's a planning document saying, given the information that we have, there's things that could change. For instance, sales could increase or decrease. Supply mix. There's a lot of things that could change. So, as we all know,
it doesn't require us to borrow the money.
Yes,
correct.
Does it limit us though in terms of how much we can borrow?
No.
The only limitation it does is the coverage ratio. So that's from a financial perspective. So we would have to issue a lot in order for that to occur.
So we could borrow more. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Theoretically, yes. These are considerations that I would suggest, as stated before, that the board reevaluates later that appropriate amount. But yes, the board could already issue more, could not issue. But what's locked in is the 5% each year, if this is the scenario that we proceed with the administrative record and the board.
2 years.
2 years. Right, 2 year. Election.
It's not locked in for 5, it's locked in for 2.
Right, for the 218 period, 2 years.
Correct.
So,
And if we had a new 218, we could actually adjust it next year.
Right.
So let me just make sure I understand this. So for purposes of whether the board needs to do a new 218 process, So that would be something if we go forward right now and do a rate study that assumes a number of things, including a borrowing, and it's for a 2-year rate increase. If everything stays the same, there's no requirement. We just implement it the way it is.
Right.
But as Sanjay mentions, things will change. And if we take a look and reevaluate this at some point, one of the things that I, as your legal counsel, would want to do would be to take a fresh look at everything and make the decision as to whether things have changed enough and the cost of service has changed enough to where we might need to consider doing another 218 process. I don't know right now what the factors are going to be and what the board's decision is going to be, but just to be clear, we may have to take that analysis and depending on what the board decides to do, I may come back and say, based on whatever you're going to do, you might have to do the 218 process again. I can't sit here right now and say, if you change it, do a $10 million debt issuance and do nothing with your rates, that doesn't do anything to your cost of service study.
Right, but our options are open.
Options would be open, but one of those options might include doing another 218 process.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can do that at any point.
Yeah, we're getting really good at them, I think.
So, Chris, do we go forward with this and ask Sanjay to take the?
Let the record reflect, I am opposed to the borrowing, and I would prefer the 6.5 rate increase with no borrowing. I'm in the minority. You guys can borrow as much as you want, but the record will reflect, I'm opposed to it. I know we're not doing it this week, but you guys proceed with whatever direction you feel like giving. I just want to go on record as being opposed to the scenario that includes borrowing. I'm in favor of 6.5% without borrowing for the next 2 years. That would be my suggestion. Clearly, I'm in the minority, so you guys let Sanjay know what you want for the model.
Well, we still need you as the president to tell Sanjay what we want.
Well, I think Sanjay's
assuming that the rest
hearing
of
an
us,
intoxication for borrowing and 5%.
right.
Yeah, going forward at the discussions on the final vote, everybody's able to say what their view is at that time, and then we do a vote on this. But that's fine for now, I think.
Yeah, and that's all this item was intended to be, was direction to Ralph Tellis.
But I think that in fairness, if Sanjay can also bring forward the scenario where we borrow less or don't borrow, if at our next meeting we feel more comfortable with the economy and where things are going, that can still be reviewed, correct?
When's the next meeting? I'm sorry, that we'll discuss this. July?
August.
August.
Yeah, and so there is a sort of procedural thing that needs to occur. And the next procedural thing in the step in order to meet the Prop 218 requirement is for us to write this administrative record. And so that's why we're looking for sort of a suggestion or a nod where you feel comfortable with, because then we're going to solidify that administrative record. Then that record will be posted on your website, be publicly available, and then the Prop 218 notice will reflect that, and then you would have the hearing. So this is, we want to have direction on this, which way we want to go.
So what about a compromise that we announce that we aren't considering a rate increase greater than 5.5%, and we continue to tweak this between now and then?
Personally, I don't think that things will dramatically change for the better in the next month. If you want my honest opinion, I think they will not dramatically change for the better for the next half a year. And I don't think that what we learn between now and August is going to change my opinion about this being probably the most balanced way that we can move forward, knowing what we know and given the uncertainties that we don't know, so to speak. So that's my opinion. So I think we have to give Sanjay the direction,
Yeah,
use this as our product for now, and for him to make that for Mary to make that presentation in whatever way she has to in the on the website, etc. Correct? I don't know. Is that what we're saying?
I think that we don't need to vote or take action, but I think we have to have a consensus of agreement. And if we don't have that, how can we possibly give Sanjay direction?
Okay.
So I agree with Bob, or he agrees with me, or we agree. I think scenario 2 is the appropriate direction. So there's 2 of us. Chris clearly doesn't agree with it. That's fine. But we have 2 other board members. We need at least some indication of their feeling, in my opinion, so we don't waste our money and Sanjay's time.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So I would go along with the 5% and the option that we could borrow more than $3 million. It's not ideal for me, but I could live with that. And I completely agree with Bob. We're not going to know much more in another month. And it's going to be probably this time next year that the picture will be clearer. And I hope it's clearer next year at this time, but may not be. You know, those vaccines, it'll take a long time just to get 300 million people vaccinated. It isn't going to happen in a day. So we've got a lot of problems going forward. The whole country does, and we're just part of it.
Okay, that's 3. And Glenn, where are you at?
Well, we already crossed the goal line was 3.
Okay, well, just trying to get more and see if there's a broader consensus, so we feel like, you know, we're all sort of mostly on the same page.
Yep.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Glenn? I couldn't hear you.
I can see the argument for both sides, and I'm comfortable moving forward at 5%. I'm really worried that it's presumptuous. I feel very cautious that we want to be very careful about what the economics of the community are going to be in the future, and that is I apologize, but I do feel a little uncomfortable about a borrowing-based process, but I hear the argument that this is really low cost money. And so it seems like at this current time, we as the government agency should be taking a bigger burden than our clients are, than our customers are. And so that leads me to support moving forward at 5%. I'm not wild about a borrowing-based program, but I sure do worry that as the government group, we should do it. So I'm repeating myself, so shut up, sorry.
You know, I did pay attention to Half Moon Bay High School, and the difference between 5% and 6.5% is about $1 a month per customer. Maybe $1.50 for big users. So I don't think that is going to break the camel's proverbial back. Just saying. Thank you.
Mary, Sanjay can go forward, right? I'm sorry.
Yeah, clearly Sanjay has taken enough abuse from me and has hurt the others. So thank you very much, and expect more next time.
Well, my pleasure.
But thank you very much.
Chris, you're not lying back on your sofa. Maybe that's why.
That's why I purposely came in to sit upright. Otherwise, I'd be at home lying on my sofa.
That would have been better if you're on your sofa.
I got more piss and vinegar in me sitting here.
All right.
Thank you very much. Mary, item 6B, please.
Okay, let's see. I guess I'll need our screen back. Okay. The next item is the approval of the fiscal year 2020, 21, 2029, 30 capital improvement plan. We have to put a stake in the ground for the rate analysis. So we were asking for the approval of the plan as we have it right now. I think the district's 10-year capital improvement plan is a continual work in progress and requires ongoing attention, obviously, and even looking out at 50 years. So, that's something we'll definitely keep in mind.
And you've been here 50 years, right?
Yeah. So anyway, so one of the things, I am going to share my screen and for just a minute. You see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, in terms of where we are today, right now we're showing about a 45 million CIP in today's dollars. 2 years ago, when we approved the CIP, we had 33 million. The big changes are in our treatment plants, which we discussed last month when you approved the proposal for HDR to do the Nunes water treatment and improvement project. We also have the tanks that we need to address. We're going to have, just briefly, I know we're limited on time, but John Sutter is going to give us a brief overview of the tank situation. We've been working with John for a good year plus, looking at seismic reliability, looking at all our tanks and trying to figure out how we should move forward. So I am going to stop sharing and I'm going to let John share his screen, and we'll briefly go through what we're thinking about on as to our tanks.
That tank needs to be tagged.
Not encourage them.
Thanks, Mary. I'll skip this slide then. So yeah, as Mary mentioned, we wanted to give the board an update on the planning process that we have been going through for the past, year plus on the tanks. And, early on, we looked a lot at individual tanks and the improvements that were needed at each of those sites. And more recently, we've tried to take a more holistic look at the storage throughout the system, see where the best locations are for storage going forward, where they can provide the most benefit to the distribution system for both normal supplies and for resiliency. And we've kind of merge those two different evaluations together to come up with some recommended next steps. So everyone should be pretty familiar with the distribution system, but just wanted to point out there are 10 potable water storage tanks currently in the system, in addition to one raw water tank, Cahill tank. And currently there is a total of 8 million gallons of nominal storage in the potable water distribution system. You can see here, this is a summary of the 10 potable water storage tanks. You can see many of them were constructed in the 1950s and 60s. Some of them have not been recoded in recent years. And they also require, as we found out, a number of the tanks that were due for recoding require seismic retrofits so that they can maintain their survivability under a seismic event. So one thing, let me go back one slide. We look, these are the tanks that require rehabilitation, what we identified is that a number of these tanks are not in the ideal locations to supply the distribution system effectively. And it's hard to access a lot of that storage that's in these tanks. So this is a hydraulic profile schematic of the district's water system. And so what this is showing is the elevations of each of the tanks and the service elevations of each of the pressure zones. So within a distribution system, the hydraulic grade line sets the pressures in each pressure zone, and also how water moves in the system. And so in zone 1, the main pressure zone that serves goes all the way from Denison to Half Moon Bay through El Granada. This is the Nunez water treatment plant. This is the Denison water treatment plant. The hydraulic grade line is set by these Denison tank and the Half Moon Bay tanks 1, 2, and 3. In some of these lower zones, so this is downtown Half Moon Bay, zone 6, and this is a big part of El Granada, zone 0 and zone 00. The hydraulic grade line is set by the pressure reducing valves or pressure regulating valves, which reduce pressure from, or reduce head from what's set at the tanks to a lower pressure. But the majority of your demands are in zone 1 and zone 6. And really all Half Moon Bay tanks 1, 2, and 3, Denison, can serve all of those areas and zone 0 by gravity. They are really, so basically they serve 95% of the district's demands by gravity. And because they flow through directly from the water treatment plants, there's no water age issue at those tanks. So it's ideal to maximize storage at those 2 sites. Alternatively, or the opposite spectrum, these are 3 tanks that are in need of repairs, but they really do not provide much benefit to the system. Their operating levels are below the hydraulic grade lines in zone 1 set by Half Moon Bay and Denison for these 2 tanks. And in zone 6, it's well below the PRV setting, which sets the hydraulic grade in zone 6. So under normal operations, they don't turn over. These tanks don't drain by gravity to the lower zones. For El Granada 1 and Alves, they're used basically to break head before they're pumped up to a higher zone. But they do create some water age issues because there's a limited turnover in those tanks, especially Miramar and Alves. So based on the condition assessments and this look at how water moves in the system, and the district moved ahead with a tank siting study at the Half Moon Bay site, near the Nunez water treatment plant to replace the existing Half Moon Bay tanks 1, 2, 3. This was done by TJC and Associates, and they evaluated 3 different variants of alternatives. One was to rehabilitate the 3 tanks, which provide 2.5 million gallons of storage, to replace the Half Moon Bay tanks with a new welded steel tank of size varying between 2.5 million gallons and 5 million gallons, and to replace the new tanks with similar size pre-stressed concrete tanks. What they found was that at least a 3 billion gallon tank could be constructed within the existing footprint of this is Half Moon Bay Tank 3 without requiring significant site work, basically. So you can maintain, during construction, you can maintain storage in Half Moon Bay Tanks 1 and 2, demolish Tank 3, and build a new tank in its existing footprint. So then they did a cost evaluation over the life cycle of a 60-year life cycle of rehabilitation. This is in gray. steel, new welded steel tank, 3 million gallons we're looking at right here, which is in blue, and a new 3 million gallon concrete tank. So as you can see, the welded steel tanks, both the rehabilitation of the existing welded steel tanks and a new welded steel tank require substantial investments over the life cycle of those tanks so that the coating is maintained over time. We're assuming that typically there's a 20-year, every 20 years you need to recoat the tank. So that's what's assumed in this chart. And those coatings are expensive. And then alternatively, there's concrete, pre-stressed concrete tanks have a slightly higher initial investment, but have very low maintenance requirements over the life cycle of those tanks. So for that reason, we're recommending that the district transition to pre-stressed concrete tanks, especially because of the district's marine environment, which is very harsh on welded steel tanks. So this is, we're saying that the first, the highest priority for the storage is to see how much can be built at the Nunez site to replace Half Moon Bay tanks 1, 2, and 3. And then down the line, once you have this new tank in the footprint of the existing tank 3, you could look at adding additional storage to where tanks 1 and 2 currently sit. So the next tank, that's a high priority because of its condition is alves. So as I mentioned before, alves really on a, 99% of the time does not provide much benefit to the distribution system, except that it really does provide resiliency for the southern portion of Zone 6, which is served by a single transmission line. So if there is some supply interruption to Zone 6, especially in the southern half, or if you need to access emergency storage, in the case of an extended, for example, of the PSPS, where there was no new supply coming in, you needed to use your storage in your tanks, you could manually isolate a portion of Zone 6 to access that water, so it could backfeed the system. You close a valve and you can backfeed the system. What we found in our hydraulic modeling analysis was that in that scenario, Alves tank can provide fire flow, meet the fire flow requirements for the southern portion of Zone 6, but not in downtown Half Moon Bay. So, this is leading us to look at a number of different alternatives for Alves. We think it really will depend on what is the final size of storage that we can get at Half Moon Bay. I think that will help clarify what is the right alternative for Alves going forward. Another tank we looked at was Miramar. This is, again, a tank that it has essentially no turnover. Its operating level is below the hydraulic grade line of Zone 1, and water doesn't really come in and out of the tank under normal conditions. What it does do is it does help with fire flows in this neighborhood. Hydraulic modeling that we performed showed that without the tank, if you did take the tank out of service, you could meet the fire flow requirements by upsizing a portion of the main along Alto Avenue from a 6-inch to an 8-inch. We recommend that if that's, that we perform fire flow testing to confirm those modeling results before we move ahead with any decision going forward. But we think it might be a good opportunity to eliminate this Miramar tank and invest dollars in a more useful site for storage. The next tank is El Granada Tank 1, a study that Cornerstone Structural Engineering Group performed in 2018 showed that this tank required substantial upgrades, including replacement of the retaining wall behind the tank. This tank, again, really has very little operational benefit. It's a small tank, and it's well below the hydraulic grade line, and it's just used to pump, as a 4-bay to pump from EG1 pump station to tank 2. In order to eliminate this tank, which we recommend, you would need to resize the pump station so that it can pump directly from zone 1 to EG2. So in summary, this is where we are in the planning process. We think it's a high priority for the district to initiate detailed design on a replacement of Half Moon Bay tanks 1, 2, and 3, with the goal to maximize the size of a new tank using the existing footprint of Half Moon Bay 3. We think that's approximately 3 million gallons, but we're hoping that it could be more. And as part of that effort, to also evaluate and site a future second tank in the existing footprint of Half Moon Bay 1 and 2. Based on that, the detailed design, and once we confirm what size can be constructed in the Half Moon Bay site, it would be to reassess the alternatives for alves and determine what is the appropriate size of storage at that site. But we do believe that for Miramar and EG1, we recommend that after we perform fire flow testing for Miramar, that the district move ahead to eliminate those 2 tanks, which serve very little purpose, very little use, and would be costly to rehabilitate or replace. That's all I have. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I mean, all the years I've sat here, this is probably one of the more interesting presentations I've ever seen. And this is really big stuff. This is, reimagining the district. This is huge. And thank you for bringing this to us. I know we've talked about it at the facilities level, and now that we all get to see it, this is really a reimagination of how things work. Quick question I have you spoken with the fire department? In that, when you talk about the Alves tank not serving downtown, the biggest fire in recent history was downtown. 600,000-700,000 gallons was our best guesstimate at the time when Cunha's burned. The Ritz being sprinkled, I don't think is not going to burn to the ground like Cunha's. So do you get do you get input from fire departments on where they foresee the biggest need for water?
So where the district has gotten input from fire department is setting their fire flow requirements. So that would be, what is required in terms of so what should we be planning for in terms of duration and flow for residential fires and commercial fires?
So what I'm thinking simplistically, downtown, historic downtown, old buildings, non-sprinkled, no fire stops, in the attics, which really caused Cunha to burn so quickly. Things like that. So it sounds like it's more just dry fire flows at hydrants, and it really doesn't get into structure types.
But Chris, that's where the Nunes tanks will be the heavy hitter.
Oh no! I absolutely understand that. I'm kind of making the case against the Alves tank.
Yeah. Well, what we found in our hydraulic modeling was that Alves, under normal conditions, unless you isolate the zone, we couldn't find a fire condition where in zone 6 that Alves provided flow.
Yeah,
it was all coming from Nunes.
Because I'd love to lose Alves too, or really downscale it. And this is just coming from what we've talked about at facilities. Anyhow, so that was just my input. Open it up to other directors, please.
So I have a question about the Alves tank as well. And it's obviously there for resiliency more than for water pressure or fire flow. So if we eliminate it, how do we deal with that? I mean, we have only one really major line going south, and if we lost it, what do we do?
So
How do we
there's a
cope with that?
there is a smaller tank there. If you look above it, there's a 0.4 that's higher. And the problem with Alves is it's too darn low.
I agree.
And so it's the wrong elevation. It's an old design that won't pass seismic. The thing is rotted out. It's right now a liability rather than an asset. And I'm totally with Chris on this. We studied this hard in the facilities committee, and that tank either needs to be gone, resized, or replaced at the correct elevation.
Well, I agree with all of that. I just, I wonder how do we guarantee the resiliency of the system for zone 6 should we lose connection to the newest tanks?
We're in the technical design phase here, fellas. I have two questions for Mary and for the facilities committee, which are we're in 5B, which is the agreement on the capital plan, I thought. Yep. Where did this, I didn't see anything about this or have any information about any of this discussion in terms of the philosophy of what we're doing. I know about the tanks. I'm glad to see we have detail. It's great. They've done a good job of drilling down. I understand that. Did the facilities committee see this in advance in order to be able to validate the capital plan with the output of this? That's the first question. So do what we have to vote on tonight to agree for the capital plan for our system thing, is that provided for in this based on this? And two, will we see this again at a future meeting with a proposal from BKI for how much and how and what we're going to do and the information that tells us about the rationale, the pros and cons? I'm not sure where this fit into that agreement, this approval of this capital plan. So maybe that's my problem. And I'm confused because I knew nothing about the fact that this would be part of, one of the issues tonight. And I'm happy with it. I just don't know what I can do about it yet.
Yeah, can I say something here? We wanted to present this as, have the game plan of what we're looking at. We're not here really to make decisions on this plan. This was, this is going to be evolving. The key item, that we fill in with the tanks is that we want to get started with a design for Carter Hill, Rapid Nunez, for a concrete tank replacement. That will tell us and inform us on some of these other decisions. So we're not really here to make decisions on any of the other tanks, except that we put placeholders into the CIP for us to consider them. And I think it'll be much more informed once we have the, even a pre-design initially from Carter Hill. The other pieces, some of these decisions are actually a little bit more, that might be a little easier. For example, EG1 is one that is, that one could be an easy decision to demolish and to build a pump station. But again, it's, we're putting placeholders of, to understand that we're going to have to do some investments.
And do we have numbers for the demolition costs on these tanks in the capital improvement budget?
We got some initial numbers from TJCC that we put into our plan. Realize that these are just very rough estimates, but demolition is considered.
What's it cost to throw away the Alves tanks?
I'll ask, John, what did we see? And James, we're in the, for some of these things, it was, a couple $100,000 on some of these, but I have to go back and look at the details.
Yeah, I mean, the demolition is relatively cheap actually because you could salvage the steel. So the actual demolition of the tank is not a very costly item.
Oh, I'm shocked. That thing's enormous. And we own the Miramar tank site, and we own the property that the Alves sits on. So there ought to be some good offsets in terms of selling those properties. I think the Miramar tank location would be worth a fortune. Got one of the best views on the coast.
It does, yeah.
Should I make a move that we approve the fiscal year 2021 and 29-30 capital improvement plan?
That'd be a great idea.
Okay, I so make that recommendation.
Second.
Any more discussion?
I'd like to see it be a bigger number, but I'll vote for it.
Yeah, we already heard that. Okay, duly noted. Okay, Denise, please, before somebody changes their mind.
Director Coverdale.
Aye.
Director Feldman.
Yes.
Director Larimer.
Yes.
Vice President Reynolds.
Yes.
President Michelson.
Yes. Okay, item C, this will get us more water to the southern part of our district. And Mr. Tarantino, you've been sitting here patiently listening to us.
I'm an observer.
Yeah, well, now
I'm
we're
thinking of
talking about
moving to
real
Half
money.
Moon Bay, seeing what this district's about.
We're the fun district.
Yeah.
Mary, please.
Okay, the next item I'm going to have James talk about.
Good evening. This is for, currently we have two pipes that cross Pilarcitos Creek that feed the southern portion. So this is kind of a good timely topic as we're talking about Alves. We replaced the Main Street crossing about 5-6 years ago, and we are now looking at the Pilarcitos crossing from Strawflower over to Oak Park. It's a cast iron pipe, location's unknown. If it starts leaking, it would take a while since it's in a creek bed to realize it's leaking and could do significant environmental damage. So in August, the board approved 30% design with EKI for this project, which included topographic survey, boundary survey, and some geotech. We've initiated work with WRA consultants for CEQA. And we are now looking at the alignment that EKI has picked out. We have criticized their design in many different aspects, and John's come back with a very solid alignment, and we like the way he has defended his work. And we are looking at a detailed design, and that will also include bid support and engineering support during construction. And the amount is $83,000. This is $45,000 in engineering. The bid support and engineering support during construction is about $37,000. This is going to be an HDD, just to remind everyone, horizontal directional drilling underneath the creek. It's not a simple project. It's a very important project. So we're looking for the board to authorize the general manager to execute a professional service agreement with EKI for detailed design and engineering and bid support services for the amount of $82,900. And if you have any questions, the EKI team's here, and me and Mary are also here to discuss. Any questions?
I move we approve the general manager executing a contract with EKI. And I heard it's a not to exceed number, right? 82,600?
That's correct.
I read it.
Yeah, this is Glenn. I'll second it.
Yeah, thank you both. I know we've discussed this on numerous occasions, and I look forward to proceeding with this project. So unless there's any discussion, let's go. Let's get this thing approved.
Director Coverdale,
Aye.
Director Feldman,
Yes.
Director Larimer,
Yes.
Vice President Reynolds,
Yes.
President Michelson.
Yes, thank you. Okay, off to item D. This is a project that may outlive us all, but we're moving ahead incrementally here. Mary, please.
Okay, so with the approval of the district's water right permit in January 2020, the district received an extension until December 2026 to perfect its water rights on Denison and San Vicente Creeks. So in order for the district, so in order for the district to perfect its rights on San Vicente, the district needs to construct a new diversion structure and a pipeline extending from the structure to the Denison treatment plant pump station. So, we've already taken some initial first steps. We hired AES, who did the EIR back, a number of years ago, and they're working on the permitting. We also had a small agreement that was under my authority to do a conceptual design of the diversion structure, and that was done by Stetson Engineering. So the next step in this project is to design the pipeline from the point of the diversion structure to the Denison, treatment plant. And so we have a proposal from Stetson Engineering. The work will involve surveying the existing intake pipeline and the alignment of the new pipeline, which will be in existing roadways. Reviewing the hydraulic study prepared by Kennedy Jenks back in 2013 to determine the pipe sizing and need for pumping, and to prepare a preliminary plan set for the pipeline replacement and new pipeline. That would be like a 50% submittal. So we're asking the board to approve a not to exceed time and materials agreement with Stetson Engineering for $100,439. So I know that Dave Dixon is here tonight as well if we have any questions.
No, this is the
I
next.
move we approve the contract.
It's the next
As long
step
as we're not offending KI.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The next step in our marathon effort run, as it were, to perfect our rights, suggested by Dave at the previous meeting where he presented the need and the rationale for moving forward. And so this is simply the next 5K or 2K or whatever number of feet will go to complete this marathon in 2026, which is interesting, being 26 at the end. But okay, it's just confirming that.
Correct.
I did hear a motion, but I didn't hear a second.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you. And yeah, this is an ultra marathon here. So let's have a vote on this, please, Denise. Roll call.
Actually, it's a triathlon.
Director Coverdale,
Aye.
Director Feldman,
Yes.
Director Larimer,
Yes.
Vice President Reynolds, Vice President Reynolds,
Say yes.
Okay, now yes. Without the mute button, I said yes now.
President Michelson.
Yes, thank you. Well, some good news.
Yeah.
6E.
Good news. So I'm going to quickly share again. So I know we don't have a lot of time, but the preliminary results are in for our fiscal year ending June 30th. And we actually had a really good year compared to what we budgeted, and the budget represents what we budgeted clearly 2 years ago. But I will say, at the with our water revenue, we actually had some warm months over, particularly in May and June, and so despite some downside on the some of the hotels and restaurants and things, we actually ended the year at close to 4% above our what we had planned. The other pieces we did on our non-operating revenue, we had some our higher tax revenues. Some are one time, so I will say, don't always count on this, but it was a great year for that. On our operating expenses, the key thing is, we had lower personnel costs, and it was a combination of having a vacant position for the for my former position and half time with Dave in the first part of the year, but also we did have a kind of a one-time thing, reduction in our payment from CalPERS toward our pensions. So again, that's kind of a one-time, but that was 150,000 or so. And then we had benefits a couple of years ago after I refunded the debt service. So all in all, we really we had a good year, and it really allowed us to contribute to our reserves. We did keep this, these numbers are included in Sanjay's model, but it was very, it was very promising. So anyway, I wanted to share that.
Mary, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
On the revenue, we budgeted 13,686 and we brought in 14,653. Oh, you took the screen away.
Yeah.
And on expenses, we spent less than we budgeted. So shouldn't those two amounts add together? What am I missing? Is it too late and I'm just getting too old? Shouldn't it be 1,341 contribution?
Oh, no, that's the difference between the budget and the actual. 593.
Well, if you look at the.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're right.
You're
right.
Well, I'm sorry if I'm right. I don't want to be right. I just didn't understand it.
That's correct.
Because it looks like it's 1,341.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. I apologize. This was a last minute ad, so we'll.
But it's even better. It's better by 2.5 times.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Congratulations.
You're on the finance committee.
Yeah, yes, it was, this was done right before the, yes, so I stand corrected. But we
I didn't want to
we had a
correct you. I just thought it was amazingly good news. How could it be better?
Are any of those reserves, the additional reserves, Mary, going to be affected by the extra capital that we need for projects that flop over into this year?
Well, basically, this will be, we do have about 1.5 million of projects that are carryover projects.
Right.
Yeah, and so those will be kind of deducted from the reserves.
Okay, no, so you're going to eat that up with the carryover stuff.
Correct.
Okay. So
Correct.
the total reserves is slightly less robust after you pay for the projects that are carried over. and being done. Okay, just want to be sure.
Yeah,
But it's so good,
yeah. It's,
so great. I mean, I'm not arguing with it. I'm just asking.
Less borrowing, that's what I see.
Oh, music to my ears.
okay.
Makes me feel better about the lower rate increase, actually.
Okay.
The
So,
numbers just keep getting better. It's unbelievable. Where's Sanjay when we need him?
He's behind the woodshed.
Yeah.
so we have,
He's hoping you got rid of that stick.
Okay, item 6, I've been here 19 years and I'll still never understand it, but this is a housekeeping one we go through every year.
yeah, this is great housekeeping. So it's an annual event. So we have to adopt a resolution establishing our appropriation limit for the next fiscal year. And the calculation for the limit was handled by Handsome Bridget and also approved by our auditors. And I will say that we are, we're far in excess of the amount, the appropriations limit is far in excess of the amount. So it's basically a non-issue, but we have to adopt this resolution. So
I make a motion that we adopt resolution establishing appropriations limit applicable to district during fiscal year 2020/2021.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Director Coverdale,
Yes.
Director Feldman,
Yes.
Director Larimer,
Yes.
Vice President Reynolds,
Yes.
President Michelson.
Yes, thank you. Okay, wow, we got through that. James, looks like we're gonna hear from you again, maybe?
Evening, board members. In the spirit of trying to stay in your good graces, I'll be brief.
Thank you.
Monthly highlights, we got a lot done. I wanted to point out that we replaced the hardware on the flagpole at Main Street before the 4th of July.
Yay.
Mary knows how to get things done and get us to do things in time. Source of supply, June, we had Denison Reservoir wells and Crystal Springs Reservoir. Typo there I just found. We're going to be switching to Pillarcitos this week. Anticipation of PG&E doing some maintenance work pre-PSPS. We've banked some water in the reservoir. They put in a second siphon so they can deliver us hopefully what we need. So we're going to give it a shot this week, see how it goes. We might be, if everything goes well, we'll be able to stay on Pillarcitos until it starts raining again. So we're looking forward to doing that.
Yeah. Ooh.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. So we're going to give it a shot. We pushed them and they decided to put in a second siphon so that we can get some water out of what little water is left in the reservoir. And they've essentially given us a promise of what we can pull out of that reservoir until November. So,
So is this something they may do on an annual basis, you think?
well, this is new. There's only been one siphon there. And we've asked them, because of the PSPS events of last year and us putting the pipeline in, that we want them to deliver some water, and they can't get water over the spillway. So they've given us some parameters of how they can get us some more water, and they went ahead and put in another siphon and tested it. So it's looking pretty promising.
Yeah, no, going forward in the out years, if we could get off of pumping water over the hill.
Absolutely.
This could be huge.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. And we actually got them to give us some acre feet numbers of what we can have this year.
Oh, good job. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All staff involved. I give the credit to all the staff that helped us with this. And my hat goes off to the PUC staff. They've been
for even taking the time to consider us.
Yeah, they really showed us some attention that we need. So we're very appreciative of that.
And and having grown up on Pillarcitos Creek, which is historically flooded, if they can now draw that below the spillway that will allow them to capture more rainwater, possibly lessening flood events in the wintertime. So this has a side benefit to those who, live on in Pillar Cities Canyon. So this is great news. Thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And then projects, we got a larger vault installed on the PRV at Portola. Main Street roof projects complete, some fascia board touch-up. Denison Tank Road Culvert project. We did a pre-construction meeting week before last. We're going to be having the contractor mobilized at the end of the month. Denison generators, the material submittals are coming in. One of the ATSs has shown up. We'll also be starting that at the end of the month. Generators probably won't be here till early mid-August. Garcia Avenue emergency main replacement is complete. HDR, we did the Nunes improvement kickoff meeting. Survey work is complete. Geotech borings will be happening next week. CityWorks Esri talked to the consultants today about where we're at on that. We've got the GIS set up. Miller Spatial's working on the CityWorks portion of the setup and looking how we do business here. And EKI is nearing completion on the Grandview and Pine Willow pipeline replacement project design. And that's it.
Good news. Anybody have any questions for James?
Yeah, how do you guys do all this wearing masks and staying 6 feet apart? That's what I want to know. And being socially distant.
The Half Moon Bay folks, they're pretty okay staying away from each other. So getting a lot of independent projects done, and we're actually starting to miss each other. But when we're close, we have masks on and we try to work far away so we can get a breath of fresh air.
You got to get Monster Truck a mask. It was in my neighborhood again. Would you do me a favor? Put a mask on Monster Truck.
Put a mask on. You got it.
Thank you.
So
we'll make it a scary one.
So I see that the Garcia Street pipeline is done, but I noticed this morning that the street just north of that has a leak, and there's a lot of leaks, a lot of places where the pavement's been broken up and leaks fixed in that whole region. So do we have the same problem that we had on Garcia on some of the adjoining streets?
Historically, there have been quite a few leaks in that region that you're referring to. I think it's Potter and Valdez. We were having a lot of problem with that stretch at Garcia and didn't have time to hit the surrounding streets. So today we had to clamp a small leak, and we're going to keep an eye on it. And if we have to move further out, we're going to have to do that.
And I thought there were quite a few leaks on Railroad Avenue as well. Certainly a lot of issues.
Yeah, we're looking at the historical database. We don't have a lot of details about those leaks, just locations and dates, but we're working on getting a better database going so we can essentially with the new software, we'll be able to create essentially a heat map showing us where we've had a lot of time spent in repairs to be able to focus in a more organized manner with some
and that the Garcia pipeline, was that PVC what you replaced it with?
We did replace that with PVC.
Yeah, so should we be using that in that region for everything that we replace?
Quite possibly, yes.
And that would prevent this from, I mean, it's all ductile iron, isn't it? That's sort of, that's going.
I believe this is old cast iron.
Great job. Way to get a lot of stuff done.
Thank you, Brian. The staff here is doing outstanding.
Yeah.
We appreciate the support.
Thank you.
Stay safe and healthy.
Okay, Kathleen.
Okay.
You're up.
We'll make it quick. So good evening. The district has published their 2019 Consumer Confidence Report. It's also known as the Water Quality Report. We did that in June.
It was good.
Hey, good. I'm glad you liked it. So staff worked with hydroscience engineers to produce the report. They help with the design, the QA/QC of our water quality data, and they made sure all the required elements were included. Treatment staff provided the water quality data. They reviewed the report. They provided input on the design and also the content. So this year, the district, we tried to do something different. We took a step toward paperless. So instead of mailing out the entire CCR, we mailed out a postcard with a direct link on the postcard for customers to be able to view the report online. So this approach resulted in, mailing out a lot less paper, and it encourages customers to go to the district's website, which is a good thing. And those customers who don't have access to a computer, they can call and ask for a copy to be mailed to them. So there still is that option that we have to provide. So staff was really happy with this process, and we think it was a success. So we will be probably doing a similar approach for next year, the 2020 CCR too.
Approximately, do you have a dollar amount that you potentially saved by going paperless? Any idea?
That we saved? No, I probably just maybe a couple $1,000s.
Okay, and okay, yeah,
because we still mailed something out, so we still had postage.
No,
it was just
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Who picked the two pictures, the postcard picture and the picture in front of the report?
That was me.
Yeah, great. I love them. They're great pictures.
Yes,
good.
Good.
That's good. Getting youth involved and drinking water. No, I like. It's just very uplifting to see that. I like.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's always a difficult, but I did get feedback from others that they agreed with the picture choice, so it made me feel more confident with the choices. But
I don't know. I like them.
Good.
That's cute.
Good. Thank you. Well, it's not even 9 yet, so we're not so bad considering all the ground we covered. Anyone else?
Yeah, we have item 8.
Oh, do we? I already folded up my agenda. What is it?
It's director items.
Oh, well, that was coming. Do you always, Jim? What do you want now?
I've got 2 items. And everybody should have this handout. And I guess this will be part of the minutes of this meeting. And Mary, you did send this out to everybody?
Yeah.
And there's 2 items. There were 3 items on it. We actually just talked about the middle one, but I'd like to talk about the first one, item 1 and item 3 on the second page. And in item 1, it's obvious that we're selling less than 100% of our capacity. Of all the commitments of that capacity, we have even additional capacity. And this item, I'm suggesting that we begin the process of discussing how we could approach the Coastal Commission to change the regulations that they've placed on us that prevent us from selling more water at the district office. Because we've got it, it's there. There's a housing crisis here. People who want to build affordable housing can't do it. People who want to build market rate housing can't do it. And yet we're sitting on excess water that's there available, but we're unable to deliver it. And it's a regulatory snafu where the Coastal Commission has imposed a regulation on us, a limit that's even inconsistent with the LCP plan that they've also approved. So we need to provide them with the information so that they can rectify that. I think this is a process that will take some time for us to get our act together and get the data they'll need to do the right thing. We need to work with the community so everybody understands what we're doing. We need to work with the city and the county so that they understand what we're doing. And then we need to go forward and petition the Coastal Commission, and that's going to take some time. So this is an item for a future agenda, but it's one that we should really start doing. We can't keep kicking this ball down the road and expect eventually it'll solve itself, because it won't unless we act. And then the last item is a favorite problem that we've had for many years in this district. we have people coming to our office who want to buy a non-priority water, and we have to tell them we don't have any to sell. And yet we have people who have purchased access to that water, and they could say, deliver it tomorrow, and we have no choice but to do that. Those people are not paying anything for the maintenance of that access. And I don't believe this is a 218 thing. 218 prohibits a fee associated with a standby on a property. But that access is not property. It's a right. It's a right to access to our system. And we have to maintain that right for them, and yet they're not paying anything for the cost of that maintenance. I think that there's a gap here in the intent and the past practice of the California Constitution, which was amended by Prop 218. And we could be assessing these people who have these access rights but haven't used them. We could be assessing them for the cost of maintaining that access. And we're not doing it, and we ought to do it. If we just charge them $100 a year, it would bring in $100,000. That's significant. So I think we should investigate whether or not we can do this legally and within the intent of Prop 218. I think it's kind of a iffy portion of the law, and we ought to try to do our best to figure out whether or not we don't have the option to charge them. So this too should be a future agenda item. Perhaps we should have a special committee to set to work to look into it, to figure out what can we do here. Because this would not be a standby charge. These people are not standing by, they've already bought it, and yet they're not paying anything to maintain it. And that's not fair to all of our other customers who are paying to maintain that access. So why aren't these people paying too?
Any directors support? We can't discuss this. We can only discuss Jim's supporting Jim for a future agenda item. So please.
Yeah, I think we should talk about both of them.
Okay, I have no problem talking about both of them. I would ask that the general manager and the president sort out when they wish to, have them agendized. And also whether we need to ask from legal any review of the legal implications of any of this stuff that may have been.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing up legal, because these will be very, very expensive items. They will require legal time. So I
agree. So yeah, okay, I'm fine with looking at them.
Okay, so I will be discussing this with our general manager for a future item.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just to clarify, Director Larimer raised a document that he said was handed out and your general manager confirmed. So just want to be sure that that is included. We referenced the minutes, but included on the district's website, because it is a document that was provided to the full board, and we need to make it publicly available as well.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll chip in that I support our learning the answers to those questions. So I think it's reasonable to learn the answers.
Okay, thank you. It will show up in the very near future. Thank you very much.
I think it's great to have our engineering staff here tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for giving us 2 hours of your time. At least you didn't have to drive back and forth. So that's the good news.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
All right. Thanks to you all. Stay safe.
Seeing you all.
Thanks. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nice to see you back.
Good night.
Take care. Bye.
Night.
Be good. Bye.